Alright guys, so I just did what most financial advisors will call insane, and that's cashing out of my 401k. That's right, I did. And I know you're probably thinking, don't you get hit with all the taxes, the early withdrawal fees from, tapping into it before 59 and a half? Isn't that the worst thing that you could do for retirement, breaking into the flow of compounding? Well, in this video, I'll be breaking down exactly why I did it, how I'm thinking about it differently, and most importantly, what my game plan is moving forward now that I've done it. So prior to leaving my previous employer, I'd worked there for about 5.5 years. During that time, I was building up my 401k, and at the height of it, I had got up to about $222,000. Now I know that may sound like a huge number in a short amount of time, but really there was just 3 simple strategies that I utilized to achieving those returns. The first was obviously maximizing my contribution every single year. So anywhere from 18,000 to 20,000, just depending on the year and how much IRS allowed for that particular year. The second was finding a low expense ratio mutual fund to help really amplify how fast those returns were compounding. And in my case, I went with the Fidelity Index Fund. I think their ticker symbol is FXAIX. They have an expense ratio of less than 0.015%. Those minor differences really help when you compound it over year over year over year over year. And then the last thing was, just utilizing dollar cost averaging, and kind of forced to do that just by nature of how the contribution system works. But every single pay period I was contributing, and so you really kind of slice down and average down over that period. And that's it. There's no secret sauce. Just did those 3 things and allowed the market to do the heavy lifting. And over the 5.5 years, I contributed over 90,000, and like I said, we got up to $222,000. So that's a little over 15% cumulative returns annually. So while I was at the W2 and building up the 401k, I also got into real estate. And as you guys know, started with wholesaling, then started fixing and flipping, ultimately started buying rentals, and in that time, I was able to build a nest egg where I was in a position to now start lending on other people's real estate deals. So I was lending to wholesalers and fix and flippers, who are the real estate operators. And that's when, something interesting started happening. I started doing deals where I was making 80% return, 93% return in 90 days. And, not just that, but, with the security and assurance, certainty, if you want to call it, of the real estate, meaning, I would borrow to these operators, and they'll put up real estate as collateral. And so if for example, if they chose not to pay back in the agreed amount of time, then I became the owner of said real estate at a huge discount, sometimes 60%, 70% of the real estate value. So either way, I was winning. So I was able to get safety with the collateral and high performance. And in the world of investing, those 2 things are hard to come by. And so ultimately, when I had the opportunity to walk away from my 9 to 5 and gain full control of my retirement account, I asked myself this one question: why settle for average market returns when I've proven that I can do better with security and more control in an asset class that I deeply understand? And it was at that point where the opportunity cost became much clearer to me, and I made the decision to cash out of my 401k. So I cashed out my 401k not because I don't believe in the traditional financing. Obviously, it had worked for me, but mainly because I believe I have asymmetric advantage with investing in real estate. I have the opportunity to make 4 times the returns with greater security, more flexibility, and direct involvement in building the wealth for myself, right? You just get lots of opportunities in real estate that you don't necessarily get with the market. I'll give you an example. There was a time where I had the opportunity to purchase a property for $400,000 for only $200,000. There was nothing wrong with the property. It was in a great location. The seller just had a tremendous pain point. I met with him at the property, and he shared with me that his wife had dementia and the property was just way too big for them, and they needed to move ASAP. Now, he needed speed, so that's not the time where I go out and get a traditional financing, try and qualify for a loan that may take 30 days and the long red tape where they call an appraiser, come and have an inspection and things like that. He didn't have time for that, and he was willing to trade his equity for speed and convenience. And in that scenario, I could have purchased that property for $215,000 and basically doubled my money in less than 6 months. Because now if I had the cash, I would have purchased it fully and then taken it to retail, wait for that right buyer, listed with a realtor, and I could have sold it for the full retail value of $400,000 and doubled my money in less than 6 months. Now, you don't get those kind of opportunities with the certainty and security on the market, on the money market. So that's the reason why, I just believe this is the right move for me, because I tend to find, I've proven that I get these opportunities, and I also lend to operators. So even if I don't get those slam dunk opportunities like that, I lend to operators like wholesalers and fix and flippers, and I'm able to 4 times the returns I'll traditionally get on the market. So after making the decision that I was going to cash out, I had to figure out a smart way to do it. And obviously couldn't have afford to have all those penalties and taxes, so I chose to, instead of liquidating, I cashed out but rolled over into what is called a self-directed 401k. Now, I used Horizon Trust as my 401k provider. Obviously, it comes at a cost, right? It was I think about $3,000 I paid to them, and they set up the plan documents for the retirement plan. They created an entity in the name of the retirement plan, and obviously a bank account accompanying that. And so with those 3 things, it gave me what is called checkbook control. So I could then go out and lend money privately, backed by real estate. I could invest in crypto. I can buy precious metals. Whatever investment I deem fit, I could then do. I have full flexibility and control to do that while still maintaining the traditional benefits of a retirement account, like the tax benefit and things like that. Now, with every investment or with every decision, right, there's pros and cons. So let's talk about that. So the first advantage, and we kind of talked about this already, is flexibility and control. Lots of people don't realize that you could legally use your retirement funds to invest in literally any asset class. Like, you could do real estate, you could buy real estate, you could loan money, you could buy crypto, you could invest in startups, whatever you want to do, you have the flexibility to do so when you have a self-directed 401k. And you also have the control element, right? Now I'm no longer at the mercy of the market, to an extent. If there's a war in Ukraine or Israel, Gaza, Iran, whatever the case may be, having effects on the market and my money is swinging, now I get to control, in a more, limited way, how much volatility based on the asset class that I'm investing in, especially if it's an asset class that I deeply understand, and I can limit my volatility and risk, right? So flexibility and control is the first thing. The second advantage is tax advantages. Obviously, you get that with traditional, retirement accounts, but what I particularly love is, when I do go out and loan on lending deals and make a $40,000 return, or maybe on a $120,000 investment in 90 days. In the past, because I wasn't doing it outside of a retirement account, I had to go buy real estate or, spend money to get deductions, or, like I said, buy real estate to get depreciation to leverage against those gains. So I, net even on and don't pay active income, right? Retirement accounts, I can make $100K and everything is tax deferred. Now I'll still pay taxes at a future date, but I get to keep that instead of, depleting that compounding. It's just a greater compound effect. And so you could buy houses, sell a house, make crazy returns, and keep all that money. And at the end of the tax year, I don't have to go out and buy property and get depreciation against those returns. Now, I'm not in any way a CPA, so take advice from your CPA. I'm just telling you what I do. Maybe it works for you. The third thing is higher contribution limits. So earlier in the video, I talked about how, I maxed out my when I was building that 401k, one of the strategies I used was maxing out my contribution limit. Now, the IRS traditionally with, it's typically 18,000, they increase it. Some years it's 19,000, 19,500, I don't know. But with a self-directed 401k, you could contribute as much as $66,000 annually. Now, again, I'm not a CPA, so check with your CPA. But what this does for me is not only reduce my taxable income, because now I'm able to contribute more into my tax retirement account, which is tax deferred. So whatever, if I was only able to contribute 20,000, now I can contribute 3 times more. Obviously, that reduces my taxable income, but also supercharges my compounding in my tax retirement account, which is just magnificent. The fourth benefit is specifically what I'm planning to do, which is lending in real estate-backed lending. So I'm going to be doing, traditional lending to fix and flippers for their projects, real estate development, particularly wholesalers. So if you're watching this, I'm unveiling my game plan. So please make it worth my while that I decided to cash out my 401k. But if you're a wholesaler and you need transactional funding, you need earnest money deposit for your deals, or you need double closes to hide your assignment fees, reach out to me. This is where part of the funds is going to be coming from, my retirement account to fund your deals. So reach out to me at fastdoubleclose.com and enter in your details, and I'll be happy to fund your deals and protect your assignment fees. But I digress. So the other benefit is because I'm actively lending and what I'll be using the funds to do, it's also relatively passive. Now, it's not as passive as a set it and forget it like it will be in the market, but the only active thing I'm having to do is go out and find the opportunities. Outside of that, once I underwrite it and I fund, I literally don't have to do any work but wait for the maturity date to get my capital back plus returns. So it doesn't necessarily hinder me, because that's the other thing you also consider when you're investing, is like, how much effort am I putting in to get the rewards, right? With the market, I'm literally not doing anything. So I have to account for that when I'm looking at the opportunity cost. But in this case, because I'm not really doing much, obviously, it is a little bit more active participation, but because I'm not actively doing way more, it's a benefit because it's almost relatively passive for someone like me who is in the real estate world already. It's not, something I'm having to go out of my way to make or find deals, right? The fifth benefit is when I do deals, either with wholesalers, fix and flippers, I just add it to my Rolodex of individuals. You build relationships when you do business, right? Let's just take, for example, in the next 5 years, who knows, maybe I'm able to fund 100 people's deals. I just built 100 relationships that if that money was in my money market in Fidelity or whatever, it will compound at some rate, but I just missed out on higher compounds or higher returns, but also all these relationships, 100 people's deals that I could have funded and build relationships with that could ripple effect to do more and more deals. I just missed out on all that. So that's an advantage of actively participating in this wealth building process that I'm doing, right? I'm also, and the sixth benefit is getting, building a business. So obviously this is a business. Now I could, over the next few years, part of the capital which is coming from this retirement account, build a business, personal brand. They now know that, hey, if you're a wholesaler, if you're a fix and flipper, you're looking for funds for your real estate project, to reach out to Ade, and Ade will fund your deal, right? So that's an additional benefit that I'm getting. And then obviously higher returns, I talked about that, right? You can get minimum, I believe, 4 times the returns. So there are 8 benefits or thereabout that I think that I'm getting by making this play. Now, what's the downsides? What are the cons? The first and probably the biggest in my eyes is the pressure to maintain velocity, right? Velocity of money is a very critical concept to understand. And with making this play, I have to always, the onus is on me to make sure that money is always working. Like, it's not a set it and forget it. Anytime it's not working, it's sitting in an account, in the retirement account, it's not generating any income until I plug it into a deal. And for me to plug it into a deal, I have to go actively find those deals, right? So that's the biggest con. So if I am not able to find, X amount of deals to plug that money into to fund and get returns, then I've lost, right? And so there's that pressure to maintain velocity. The onus is on me to continue to actively find opportunities that are good opportunities that I can fund and generate those 4x returns than what the market would give me. If I don't find those opportunities, not only do I lose the benefit, I now have an inverse opportunity cost because that money could have made at least 15% in the market, right? So that's the first con, probably in the biggest con in my eyes. The second con is kind of tied to the first, is that it's not as passive. So there is some trade-off of the time element that I have to, invest into finding deals. So I said it and forget it, like I said, it is semi-passive in my eyes because all I'm really having to do is find the deals. Outside of that, the finding deals, the underwriting, the paperwork, and things like that. That's some of the cons. So for me, those are the 2 biggest cons. Let me know if, there's other cons that I'm not accounting for, or if I'm just being biased. Let me know in the comments if there are other cons that I should be aware of going on this journey. So there you have it, guys. Bottom line is, it is not a magic bullet. It is a more complex, hands-on strategy that requires work, discipline, specialized knowledge, and a little bit of gut, higher risk tolerance. And I believe, in the phase of life that I'm in right now, I possess those elements, right? I'm young, so I should have a greater risk tolerance. I've been playing in the game on the field of real estate for the last 6 years, so should have developed some specialized knowledge, and I'm willing to put in the work, right? So not for everybody, but for the right kind of investor who wants control in a field that, you know, they believe they have an edge in. Doesn't have to, for me it's real estate. For you it could be crypto. For you it could be precious metals. It could be finding out something or picking out the next best companies, like with startups, venture capital. Whatever the case may be, playing in a field that you believe you have an advantage with those other elements, the rewards could be very well worth it. So if you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what your thoughts are. You know, I would love to, you know, do a follow-up video in maybe 2 years, see how I'm tracking, see if this decision made sense. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.